Hello, CannaSphere family. Hope you're having a smashing Tuesday. If you're watching this live, and if you're watching it after the show, then we hope you're having a great day, evening, morning, wherever you are. This is CannaSphere Africa, where we cover all the latest, greatest, not so greatest happenings in the African cannabis industry. We also touch on some international things that are happening, follow some international trends, and basically bringing together all of the exciting things that are happening as we move forward in this crazy, exciting, exhilarating, complicated, but dynamic industry. Today, we've got lots of stuff coming up. My wingman, Linda, is not with us today, so I will be telling you what the headlines are, and they are as follows. South Africa looks to lift the THC levels in hemp to 1%. That will be a big, big move, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. The presidency seeks a cannabis expert to drive the master plan. I have seen the job spec for that job. We certainly need that role, but it will be a big pair of shoes to fill. So let's hope that we get somebody into that position who really understands the matrix of what we need to do in this cannabis industry to move forward. There's a new committee being formed by government departments to align cannabis, which is also very exciting. Pal-based cannabis producer Afriplex is on a big expansion drive, and the Ukraine war is driving up the cost of European cannabis cultivation, which could work in our favor, considering we can grow outdoor without electricity and power, and all the issues that are happening at the moment are driven around power. I spoke to a friend of mine in Germany a few weeks ago who said that his power bill has doubled in the last few weeks. So the opportunity to go outdoors in South Africa has never been more prevalent, and I think it's something we should be pushing and driving more. But without further ado, let's go over to Brett in Limpopo province, who's going to tell us about exactly what's happening in the industry right now. Over to you, Brett.
There you go. Good day from a rather overcast and cloudy day at the CannaSphere news desk in Limpopo. The Cannabis for Private Purposes Bill is back in Parliament. Senior State Law Advisor Sarah Robertson has been briefing MPs this morning on a revised version of the bill. And just over an hour ago, he dropped a bombshell saying the bill envisaged limited commercial trade in cannabis for special cases, traditional healers, BEE entrepreneurs, and job-creating companies, but that this would require special ministerial dispensation. MP Stephen Swart said this was a dramatic new inclusion that might create a whole new raft of problems and suggested there should be a public participation process in drawing up the bill. That's all coming out of Parliament this morning. One of the main points coming out of the presentation, which was very interesting, is that government is willing to raise the acceptable limit of THC in hemp to 1%. This is a major step forward for the South African hemp industry, if this is to be the case, as the Department of Agriculture has previously defined hemp as cannabis with less than 0.2% THC. The change in government's thinking is also evident in the fact that the presidency is looking for a cannabis expert to re-kickstart the National Cannabis Master Plan. A job advertisement was put out by the Industrial Development Corporation last week to take control of cannabis policy. One of the first tasks of the incoming cannabis expert will be to form a new committee that for the first time will bring all the major government role players around the same table. The new cannabis desk in the presidency will lead the new body, which will comprise of the Departments of Agriculture, Justice and Constitutional Development, Trade and Industry, as well as Health and SAPRA. The candidate for the job must have experience in driving legislative change and will have to draw up a cannabis policy action plan and timeline and report to the president on progress every 4 months. Pal-based Afriplex is spreading its wings with plans to establish cannabis processing facilities in the Vaal Triangle and Botswana later this year. But its CEO, Dani Nel, has warned that the year ahead will be one of tough consolidation for the cannabis industry, which may leave many participants in dire straits. The Paarl-based pharmaceutical firm has already secured a site in the Sedibeng Special Economic Zone in Vanderbijl Park and has entered into a joint venture with Professor Benny de Beer's Botswana subsidiary, Fresh Standard, to set up a cannabis facility at Selibe Pikwe in Botswana. Nel says in South Africa, it'll still take time for a coherent legal framework to be put in place, and that many cannabis companies are in a vulnerable position and may not have the cash to hold out until some form of domestic commercial trade in cannabis is legalized. Looking further afield, the price of producing cannabis in Western Europe will go up as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. That's the view of Franziska Katterbach, President for Europe at Chiron Life Sciences, based both in Frankfurt and the UK. She told High Times magazine she did not expect the war to impact cannabis supply chains, but she anticipated higher energy costs. She said under European law, all medical cannabis consumed had to be EU GMP certified, and this meant that the cultivators had no option but to grow indoors, and they would have no choice but to absorb rising gas, electricity, and water costs. And as you said, Trenton, maybe that's an opportunity for African cannabis exporters. Back to you.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks for that. I wanted to unpack something quickly. You spoke about this inclusion into the bill, which is this crazy bill that's been bubbling around for a long time. Can you just unpack that quickly for us? I didn't quite catch the whole thing.
I stand under correction here, Trenton, because I was following it on YouTube this morning and I didn't hear all of the arguments, but it seems that most of the fuss was around the inclusion of a new clause that tried to bridge bringing into the rights of rustlers and traditional healers and allowing them to possess and sell or trade in cannabis. But it was very specific examples. And in such a case, those communities or individuals would have to apply to the minister for a special dispensation, at which point some of the MPs started saying, whoa, this looks all like it's introducing a whole lot of new problems and complications. And the positive thing for me that came out of this morning was that it looks like they might actually open up the bill now for public comment again, because they really have got themselves into such a tangle about trying to exclude this and include that and define it this way and that way.
Overcomplicated. I mean, it's been going on, 3 years. So
And I've heard, sorry to talk across you there, Trenton. I heard just from high government sources that the legal department has actually advised government itself that even if the current bill does get passed by Parliament, it won't pass constitutional muster. So you wonder what on earth they're still trying to push something forward where they've been told by their own advisors that it's actually not going to work.
Yeah, it's very frustrating, and the industry just keeps growing, and the illicit market keeps growing, and without that support and this thing moving forward, we're just making ourselves into the whole situation much more complicated. Anyway, let's see how it goes.
Might change with the presidency getting involved, that might speed things up.
Absolutely.
So let's not be too pessimistic.
No, there's definitely movement. I mean, I'm involved in some government stuff at the moment, which we're trying to move things forward. So it is exciting times, and we're definitely in a better situation than we were last year. So we just got to keep positive and keep driving. Brett, thanks so much. We'll see you at the end of the show. I forgot to mention that this show is brought to you by the wonderful, amazing people at Zootly. And every week for this month, we are giving away a Zootly nest. The winner from last week was Tumandran Govender from Mpumalanga. Your Zootly nest is on its way to you. And we'll be giving one away at the end of the show. So stay tuned for the questions we have. And you can enter those. We'll give you all the details at the end of this program. But right now, let's cross over to Noxy, who's going to tell us a little bit about the difference between indoor and outdoor, and if it really makes that much difference from a consumer perspective, because we all, we're very buried in the farming section and we know all that works. But your average person who wants to go into a store and buy indoor, outdoor, tunnel, etc., doesn't really know what they're buying. So Noxy is going to give us some insight into that. Over to you, Noxy.
Good afternoon and welcome to the CannaSphere Lifestyle News Desk. One of the fundamental questions for cannabis consumers is differentiating between indoor, outdoor, and greenhouse grown weed. There are a few differences between each plant, although some are more obvious than others. Outdoor cannabis is weed that is grown, outside on an open field. That's pretty obvious. Indoor cannabis is obviously grown in a more controlled environment, usually in a tent with some fancy lights, etc., etc. And then greenhouse is grown in combination type of style of indoor cultivation and outdoor cultivation. It costs more than outdoor cultivation, but less than indoor cultivation. Growing indoor is weed grown in super controlled environments, as we've already said, with specific housing facilities and lights. Scientists refer to this as a manual means of growing weed. The entire process involved in the plant's growth depends on how the farmer handles it, unlike outdoor grown cannabis, where nature dictates the growth of the plants. So how does one actually tell the difference? It might be a difficult thing for the average person to tell the difference with just the naked eye, but some of the more notable differences may be in something as simple as the size of your bud. Outdoor cannabis tends to produce the most yield and quite sizable buds, whereas indoor, although usually more potent and more attractive and fresh looking, tends to grow in not really that large as a normal outdoor bud would grow. Outdoor cannabis can at times look a bit worn out, and this is due to the natural elements like the sun and rain. Indoor cannabis looks like a lab baby, if that makes sense. Almost too perfect. Beautiful in every way. You might even notice the white fur around it, also known as trichomes, glistening beautifully around the plant. Greenhouse trichomes are also notable, but still not as pretty as indoor. Greenhouse cannabis plants are also often free from molds, mildew, diseases, and pest attacks, even the vulnerable ones. Is there a best method for growing? The debate about indoor, outdoor, and greenhouse marijuana will always be inconclusive. One winner cannot emerge from all three because they're all winners in their own rights. Experts have stressed that there is no single best number of plants produced from these three options. And it's back to you, Trenton.
Yeah, I think it's always a debate that will go on between people. I mean, personally, as a very amateur grower, I like growing outdoors because I like being in the sun. I like the fresh air, and that's just my preference. Although growing indoors is exciting because it's super technical, so you really get into the science and of the environment, and essentially are creating nature in a box. So there's pros and cons to both. I mean, obviously you can't grow outdoors in winter in certain places, so then I like to switch between the two. But I mean, everyone has their personal preference and everyone has their opinions. But at the end of the day, it's up to people to decide what is best for them.
That is 100% true. Some people are just like, weed is weed, man. I don't care where it comes from. I don't care what it looks like as long as I have it. So there's that.
Yeah. Well, I think as the people become more, there's more available and you can actually choose. I remember when the first time I was in LA and I could walk into a store and there were literally jars and I could pick and choose and select whatever I wanted. I think as that comes online, people are becoming a lot more, elitist is the wrong word, but particular about what they consume. And to have that choice is incredible, as a consumer. So fantastic things moving forward. Right. I think on to the next. We're crossing over to Cannatech and International with Jeff. Over to you, Jeff.
Hi guys, excellent. So we're going to shift it up for Cannatech and we're going to talk not about flower like Noxy did, but specifically on extracts. And the extracts we're going to talk about is Delta 8. Now, what is Delta 8? Essentially, it's an isomer, so very similar to Delta 9. It's just a shift in a double bond on the actual product. So how are these products manufactured? Well, in the US, it's legal to obviously harvest CBD in bulk. And what happens is they actually convert CBD into a product called Delta 8. And that Delta 8 is not as psychotropic as Delta 9 in terms of its effects, but when you're testing for Delta 9 in certain states where it's illicit, Delta 8 obviously flies under the radar, and that's why it's particularly popular in certain areas. So the only thing to watch out for with a Delta 8 product is making sure that it doesn't have any kind of chemical synthesis post-reaction cleanups. So the quality of a Delta 8 product is really important to make sure that you don't get any unwanted chemicals with that conversion from CBD. And it just goes to show, again, just open up the access to responsible Delta 9 products, because people are always going to be producing Delta 8s or HHC products or any related synthetic products from something like CBD. Now to the international news, the big one has been Costa Rica finally has allowed for medical cannabis access in the region. It was blocked initially by the president under some reforms. It's finally been allowed. So as of this last week, Costa Rica is joining the world in terms of legal medicinal cannabis. The other thing is for industrial hemp, they have made the smart decision to also allow for 1% THC cap on industrial hemp, which is something we hope to see in South Africa as well when it comes to the industrial hemp applications. And then lastly, New Zealand. New Zealand is allowed for medical access in the form of a flower, but used for teas. And this is a bit, it's good that there's access that's opening up in New Zealand, but it's a bit disappointing in light of the fact that about 2 years ago, New Zealand had a referendum on adult use and only lost that legalization by 70,000 votes. So back to you, Trenton. A lot happening in the international space.
Well, like I say, is 1%. 1%. That's what we need.
1%.
I'd be interested to know if you smoked a joint of 1% hemp, how much you would have to actually smoke for it to actually have any impact on you. Considering it averages from 15 upwards. It would have to be a fatty. So all this argument over 1%, 0.2%, it just seems so frivolous. And in 5-10 years' time, we're going to look around and we'll look back at this and laugh. Because I think essentially there'll be a model that comes out where it's like grow the cannabis, whatever the percentage is, and then just put it into the different streams. Don't you think that makes more sense?
No, absolutely. And I mean, if you're going to be smoking something over 1% content, it's probably going to have a lot of CBD because it would be a smokable CBD flower probably in that regard. And then it's going to cancel out. So realistically, I mean, regulate the end use of the product, never the farmer. That's usually the best way to go about this if you're trying to build a responsible infrastructure.
Yeah, especially in this country, where there's lots of farmers in areas that cannot be regulated because they're so remote. So I think absolutely right. And just quickly on the Delta 8, obviously as we get more and more into the cannabis industry and as it grows, there's lots of, for want of a better word, meddling and twisting and turning and tweaking things. Do you think that's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? Do you think we should just leave the plant as it is? I mean, what's your opinion on how we should move forward in that space?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, science is always about reinventing the space. So maybe we find something really exciting. I mean, THCP is 30 times or 10 times more potent than THC. So that's a long alcohol chain on the chemistry. So there could always be some kind of medical benefit to tweaking a product. And I do think that's maybe where we'll see cannabinoids really become more mainstream, is in certain formulations with unique tweaks. So I think there's a space for both. There's a space for traditional and there's a space for, innovative products.
Yeah, we're humans. We'll always be innovating. So you've got to just make sure that it's managed and done properly in a clean way. Jeff, thank you so much. We'll see you again, same time, same place next week. Right now, we're going to cross over to Dr. Gallo, who's going to give us a bit of insight and some information and news on cannabis and cancer. Over to you, Dr. Gallo.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Great to see you all. Today's International Women's Day, so all the best to all the amazing women out there. Today, we're talking breast cancer and medical cannabis. Last week, Dr. Carmen chatted about, having a cannabis conversation with your doctor. And I think that's very important. So what I've actually found with the cancer patients, they do not want to bring up, their treatment with cannabis with their oncologists. Some that have actually brought it up have received very negative feedback from their oncologists, and this was actually not based on facts. So it's important that doctors also educate themselves with facts and science when answering questions about cannabis and cancer to their patients. And the patients should be able to feel comfortable enough to have the discussion about their health and their treatment with their oncologists. So just bear with me. I'm going to go through some science and why cannabis should actually work for breast cancer scientifically. Then I'm going to talk about some clinical trials. There are actually 3 clinical trials that were published. And then I'm going to end off with some case studies that we have conducted and just show you some results so you guys can understand a little bit more. So, as you're all aware, we have an endocannabinoid in our body called anandamide, which is known as the bliss molecule. And this endocannabinoid has actually been proven to block human breast cancer cell growth in vitro. Anandamide has actually been found to inhibit the breast cancer cell growth and suppress certain growth factors and prolactin receptors, which lead to an inhibition of certain types of breast cancer cell lines. It was actually found that CBD emerged as one of the most potent anti-breast cancer substance. The CBD effect is due to its capability of inducing apoptosis. So apoptosis, guys, actually means cancer cell suicide, where the environment is so unhealthy for the cancer cells, they actually go into apoptosis, which is what we actually want. It was also found that cannabinoids are involved in the process of breast cell proliferation by blocking the progression of the cell cycle and then again inducing apoptosis. Further research also proved that our delta-9 THC through activation of your CB2 cannabinoid receptors, reduce human breast cancer cell proliferation by blocking the progression of the cell cycle and again inducing apoptosis. So this is science, guys. It's facts. It's actually really exciting to see where we are heading with the science. But now I'm going to share 3 clinical trials that were actually conducted with cannabinoids and breast cancer. A study conducted a long time ago, guys, 2007, actually stated that CBD represents the first non-toxic exogenous agent that can significantly decrease your ID1 expression in metastatic breast cancer cells, which lead to the downregulation of tumor aggressiveness. And this is really good results that they have concluded. Another exciting study actually comes from Spain. The conclusion drawn here states cannabinoids regulate a protein called transcription factor JND, which in humans encoded as JND gene. And this gene actually activation reduces the proliferation of cancer cells, which points to a new target to inhibit breast cancer progression. And lastly, preclinical trial demonstrates your anandamide and your endocannabinoids, as well as your phytocannabinoids, especially your THC and high doses of your CBD, have the ability to limit breast cancer proliferation and produce apoptosis. And this therapeutic mechanisms actually begin at CB2 receptor sites, which was found in the science, and now the clinical trial has actually proven it. To end, I would just like to discuss a case study that we have conducted. There's numerous studies being done in South Africa on cell lines, some of them done in University of Free State with land races. So the study I'm going to chat to you about, the case study, we had patients diagnosed, actually 8 patients were diagnosed with breast cancer, 7 females, and we had 1 rare case of a male. All of these patients were treated with different chemovers and various phytocannabinoids, including your CBD and THC. If you just look onto the screen, you should be able to see as well these are our CA153 results, guys. So this CA153 is a tumor marker that we actually use, for breast cancer. So the slide actually shows, how the CA153 results have decreased. And interestingly, if you can just look at the slide, it shows that the 5 of these patients were actually put into remission. The red actually denotes patients that were had chemotherapy and mastectomy, and the others didn't have any. So these are actually great results. You can see from the case study, from the PET scans, 5 patients in remission out of 8, I feel is actually great results. And there is much more that needs to be done here with regards to cancer and cannabis. Trenton, back to you.
I think it's fascinating insight. Thank you for sharing that. It still baffles me that we have this research, and as you say, this research is not all brand new. This is also some legacy research. And it's proven the results are there. And we are still struggling with bringing medicinal cannabis online properly and effectively. It completely baffles me. But it's going to happen. And that's some great input there. Thank you for sharing it with us. It also gives a lot of people hope that are ill, that there are other methods that are cleaner, less toxic for your body. So there's a lot of advancement. Keep posted here to see what comes up. Next, we have some updates in the grow space. We cross over to Cuban Zulu, aka Kwanda, who's going to give us a bit of insight into some new seeding and germination bits and pieces. Over to you, Kwanda.
Hi, Cannabis community. I'm coming to you live from CannaSphere's Growth Desk. Today, we're going to speak about a special little device that basically gives you, the best chances at germinating your seed successfully. It's a company called Aurora, and they've created this device called Aurora Plus Germinator. And what it does, it's a little cute box thing, technologically advanced, and you basically place your seeds in there, and it controls your environment that it is 100% correct. It controls your temperature, your hydration, airflow, and light exposure. So basically you place your seeds in this little cocoon, you put minimal amounts of water in there, and you close it and plug it in. Then it generates it then generates the temperature, it controls your hydration, your humidity, and it allows just a little bit of air in to give your seeds the perfect environment for germination. What's fantastic is basically you've got a fail-safe, device. Of course, all that's left to consider is that you need to have a healthy seed.
I love it. Is there a guarantee that all your seeds will pop?
Well, I don't know if there's a guarantee that you can hold them to, but in terms of your environment, it's 100% guaranteed that it will do its job. The seed and who puts it in there, we don't know.
I love it. Thanks, Kwanda. We'll see you same time, next place. Great invention. There's lots going on in the industry at the moment, and it's great to see innovation and things happening. Noxy, would that tool help you?
I think so. I'm old school in terms of germinating. I still use the paper towel method with the spray bottle of water and put it in a plate and in your dark cabinet. So the device looks pretty cool. I would use it.
There's this local supplier that Kwanda referenced a few weeks ago, which is the Green Door, which is the unit we have here on our campus.
Yeah.
And they've actually got one which is I'm digressing slightly, but it's about half a meter high, and on it they have a piece of glass at the front, and when you hit a remote button, the glass frosts over, so that no one can see your cannabis plant. Very sexy. Lots of innovation. I'm sure you'd love some of those, Brett.
Well, we sort of pretty much outdoor here in Limpopo, but we've had a bit of an excess of rain.
So you're out there in Limpopo.
No,
we know that.
I'm in here in Limpopo.
You're outdoor.
But we've been really struggling with this. Also shifted to about growing. We've had real bad problems with powdery mildew, hail, and I can see how farming is not an easy life, but just depending purely on the weather and that, and especially as you're moving into trying to provide quality standards and certainty, and that I think the combination of greenhouse where you can keep off some of the rain, and that is actually where I think most of the cannabis industry in the country is going to go, outside of the traditional rural areas.
Yeah, and I'm seeing some real innovation here. Like, I'll just give a highlight out to the guys at Druid's Garden. They've got this tunnel which is semi-inflated, and it's one of the slickest things I've ever seen. Like, it's fully like automated. Never seen anything like that in the world. They designed it themselves. So some really, really good technology coming out of South Africa, and I can't wait for this industry to come online properly, because there's, we are innovators as Africans and South Africans, partially because we're creative people, but also out of necessity. So I think there's some really good opportunities out there for new businesses with new ideas and new developments. Cool.
Yep. And it looks like with that the regulatory framework might actually speed up with the presidency getting involved. Let's hope that, but it'll still take another year or so for legislation to be pushed through, and whether it's going to be challenged or not, I don't know. Hopefully they get some form of legislation through this year that regulates commercial trade and allows people to start doing what they're doing already, to do it legally.
Absolutely. Guys, we've run out of time, but before we go, I just want to ask a question that people need to answer. You can email the elevate@cheebaafrica.com. That's the email address. The question is, what cannabinoid was Jeff Verlinden talking about on his section? What cannabinoid was he talking about? Ooh. You can rewind if you like, and if you remember, fire it to us in an email. Great, guys. Thanks for a great show. We'll see you again, same time, same place. This is CannaSphere Africa, bringing you all the latest news from the exciting cannabis African continent. Goodbye.
Yes. Goodbye.